Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ve bihi nesta'in. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Vessalatu vesselamu ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecma'in.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. And from Him do we seek help. All praise be to Allah, the Sustainer of all the worlds, and blessings and peace be upon our Master Muhammad, and on all his family and companions. The 13th word.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ve nunezzilu minel Kur'an ma huve şifaun ve rahmetun lil mu'minin ve ma allamnahu şi'ra ve ma yenbaghi leh.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. And we send down, stage by stage, in the Quran, that which is a healing and a mercy to those who believe. We have not instructed the Prophet in poetry, nor is it meet for him. If you want to compare the results yielded by the wisdom of the all-wise Quran and of the sciences of philosophy and their instruction and teaching and the degrees in their knowledge, then listen carefully to the following words. With its accurate expositions, the Quran of miraculous exposition rends the veil of familiarity and the habitual cast over all the beings in the universe, which are known as ordinary things, but are all extraordinary and miracles of divine power, and reveals those astonishing wonders to conscious beings. It attracts their gazes and opens up before their minds an inexhaustible treasury of knowledge. As for philosophy, it conceals within veils of the commonplace all the miracles of power, which are extraordinary, and passes over them in an ignorant and indifferent fashion. It only puts forward to be noted freaks, which have fallen from being extraordinary and deviated from the order of creation, and sheared away from the perfections of their true natures. It offers them to conscious beings as objects of wise instruction. For example, it says that man's creation is ordinary, despite its being a comprehensive miracle of power, and looks on it indifferently. But then, with cries of astonishment, it points out as an object of instruction a person who has diverged from the perfection of creation and has 3 legs or 2 heads. And for example, it considers ordinary the regular sustenance of infants and young, bestowed from the treasury of mercy, which is a most delicate and general miracle of mercy, and draws a veil of ingratitude over it. Whereas, on spotting an insect under the sea, which is an exception from the general order, and is alone and isolated from its fellows, being fed with green seaweed, it wants to make the fisherman weep for it, because of the divine favour and munificence manifested on it. Footnote number 3. Just such an event occurred in America. So see the wealth and riches of the Holy Quran in regard to knowledge, wisdom and knowledge of Allah, and the poverty and bankruptcy of philosophy regarding learning, instruction and knowledge of the Maker. See them and take a lesson. It is because of this, because the all-wise Quran contains infinite brilliant elevated truths, that it is free of the fancies of poetry. Another reason the Quran of miraculous exposition is not in verse, despite the perfection of its word order, and the orderliness and its expounding with its well-ordered styles, the order and art of the Book of the Universe, is that by not entering under the restrictions of metre, each star of its verses can be a sort of centre to the most of the other verses, and be a brother to them, and each can form a connecting line with the verses within the sphere encompassing it in order to be a bond in the relationships which exist between them. It is as if each independent verse has an eye which looks to most of the other verses, and a face turned towards them. Thousands of Qurans are present within the Quran, each of which it offers to followers of different paths. As is described in the 25th word in Surah Al-Ikhlas, is a treasury of knowledge about divine unity comprising 36 Surah al-Ikhlases, formed of a compound of 6 phrases, each winged. Indeed, like with the stars in the sky, which are apparently without order, each is unrestricted and as a sort of a centre extends a line of connection to all the stars in the area surrounding it, indicating a hidden relation between beings. It is as if, like the stars of verses, each single star has an eye which looks to all stars and a face which is turned to them. See then the perfect order within the apparent lack of order and take a lesson. Understand one meaning of the verse.
وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ.
We have not instructed the Prophet in poetry, nor is it meet for him. Understand also from it that the mark of poetry is to adorn the insignificant and dull facts with big and shining images and fancies, and make them attractive, whereas the truths of the Quran are so great, elevated, shining and brilliant, that even the greatest and most brilliant imaginings are dull and insignificant in comparison with them. Innumerable truths, like the following verses, testify to this. For example,
يَوْمَ نَضْوِ السَّمَاءَ كَطَيِّ السِّجِلِّ لِلْكُتُبِ يُوشِي اللَّيْلَ النَّهَارَ يَطْلُبُهُ حَثِيثًا إِنْ كَانَتْ إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً فَإِذَا هُمْ جَمِيعٌ لَدَيْنَا مُحْضَرُونَ.
the day that we roll up the heavens like a scroll rolled up for books completed. He draws the night as a veil over the day, each seeking the other in rapid succession. It will be no more than a single blast when, lo, they will all be brought up before us. If you want to see and appreciate how, like shining stars, each of the Quran's verses scatters the darkness of unbelief by spreading the light of miraculousness and guidance, imagine yourself in the age of ignorance and desert of savagery, where everything was enveloped in veils of lifelessness, and nature amid the darkness of ignorance and heedlessness. Then suddenly, from the elevated tongue of the Quran, you hear verses like,
يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم.
Whatever is in the heavens and earth declares the praises and glory of Allah, the Sovereign, the Most Holy One, the Mighty, the Wise. See how those dead or sleeping creatures of the world spring to life at the sound of declares the praises and glory in the minds of those listening, how they awake, spring up, and mention Allah's names, and at the sound of
تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض.
the 7 heavens and the earth, and all within them extol and glorify Him. The stars in those black skies, all lifeless pieces of fire, and the wretched creatures on the face of the earth, present the following view to those listening. The sky appears as a mouth, and the stars each as wisdom displaying words and truth uttering lights. The earth appears as a head, the land and sea as tongues, and all animals and plants as words of glorification. Otherwise, you will not appreciate the fine points and pleasure at looking from this time to that. For if when you consider its verses, you see them as having scattered their light since that time, and become like universally accepted knowledge with the passage of time, and as shining with the other lights of Islam, and taking their colour from the sun of the Quran. Or if you look at them through a superficial and simple veil of familiarity, you will not truly see the darkness each verse scatters, or how sweet is the recital of its miraculousness. And you will not appreciate this sort of miraculousness among its many varieties. If you want to understand one of the highest degrees of the Quran of miraculous exposition's miraculousness, listen to the following comparison.